three fields of life. I do perceive time to bring the three into harmony. For action to be done, first the thought must come. Thought flows like a stream, it flows into your mind, yeah.
Folks, welcome inside the Paris Sea Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is a special live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show. Coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. We can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. We just heard from legendary organist from the Santana Band, Greg Rowley, and now it's my honor to introduce to you a guru and a musician and a guy who has been trying to spread elevated consciousness and enlightenment to peeps for probably 5 or 6 decades now. Rick Stanley, an honor to welcome you to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you.
How's it going?
It's good. Slow morning. I'm way out in rural Iowa, on a little farm, and I sit here in my office. I'm writing my memoirs. I got two volumes. And that's just a little part of it. So it's taking me a while, but I'm getting near the end of the first book.
What if I remember correctly, when I talked to Farso, there was a huge TM school, educational school up in Iowa. Is that where you got you graduated to be a teacher of TM?
No. I went to India in 1968, the course just after the Beatles left. And I was very happy that they had left, because I wouldn't have gotten to write and be Marshy's troubadour for all those years if the Beatles had been taking up all his time, because pretty much when Marshy has somebody famous, he wants to make use of them to help spread the word. And so they were pretty famous.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was them and a few other high-profile celebrities, but I don't have the audio queued up right now, but Emil Richards, you went with that group, with Emil?
No. Emil Richards wasn't on my group, but we recorded with him quite a bit, with Henry Louis.
Well, I guess I'm curious if you could take us through. I've done a lot of work on Maharishi. I've interviewed John Densmore, and I've interviewed Paul Farso, and I got a chance to talk to you, Emil. I've also talked a lot recently to quite a few cats who were involved with Maharaji. Okay, so Maharaji they had very different styles. And when Emil went on his trip, which was right around it was right similar when Rick Stanley went. I just would like you to talk about the daily routine, because if I remember correctly, Emil said that it was pretty intense, really, basically meditating all day, and maybe there was a debrief at night with Maharishi. But I was hoping you could take us through when you got to that mountainside, shrine or camp, and then go ahead. Ashram. Thank you. And then ultimately, where your head was at before when you took off for there, and then how that daily routine of a mixture of meditation and just sort of silence. I remember Emil saying, maybe you'd stop and have some lunch or a little bit of food, but take it from here. Tell the audience a little bit about what that routine was like.
Well, first you said explain where my head was when I went, and so my head was, I got a high-powered lawyer to get me out of my contract with Columbia, even though we had single of the song I wrote, Tell Me Love, on the charts. And the album was just finished by Terry, and he called me in, and I listened to it, and it was beautiful. And I just had wanted to finish the project and then go and be with Maharishi. And so I got out of my contract, even though, you know, we could have gone quite a ways. Terry already had, you know, hit singles lined up all over the world. And
yeah, right.
But I just had to go, and here was a chance to get realized, and that was my goal. About halfway through being with Columbia, I just I saw what the scene was like. I saw the music scene. I saw it with the top people, the Birds and Revere and the Raiders and all of them, and Stephen Stills, and I was all in that crowd, and I saw what it was like to have made it. And so my little goal of becoming Bob Dylan, you know, from pretty young on, before he was even known, I quickly transferred after some amazing experiences, and realized, my God, there's a hell of a lot more to life than money and fame and being revered by your fellow musicians or whatever. That's just the drop-off point where life begins. And so after some amazing experiences and very connected with TM, and I went to India with my thought being, I am free at last, basically. And most people were wanting to get the contract, and I was wanting to get out of it, and so that I could write music and that had a lot more to do with the realities of life, as far as what the goals should be and why we're here. And anyway, so the daily routine, it gradually increased from just 2 meditations a day and 3 lectures, and 3 meals, to 2 meals, 2 lectures. Finally, after, you know, a few weeks, you were 1 evening lecture, very short, just to check that everybody's all right and answer any questions about experiences or whatever. And Maharishi would sit there out on the, it was outside a lot of times in the beautiful, cool evening air. We'd be sitting on top of this building, all in chairs, and it was the same when the Beatles were there. But at any rate, it got to the point where I was just, it's called rounding, you know, you meditate, come out and do asanas, you know, yoga postures, then do a breathing exercise, pranayama, and then go back and do another round, so that you keep stabilized. Before that, they used to just meditate, you know, as much as they could. But people like, on the Beatles course, people like, what was her name? I knew I'd have this problem. 74 years.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine.
My remembrance of
you're doing great.
Memes is not,
yeah, it's fine.
Not the greatest.
Yeah, it's fine.
Mia Farrow.
Sure, she was
anyway,
exactly.
Mia
she was
Farrow,
yeah, right. Yeah.
Mia Farrow and John Lennon, they both kind of started unstressing. That's what it's called, when a lot of stress starts coming out from your rounding. And when that happens, you're supposed to do more asanas and pranayama to balance the system out. But they didn't, and she wanted to go off tiger hunting suddenly. and John kind of unstressed wildly and wanted to just, he had a lot of pressure, though, from his manager and Yoko, rather. At any rate, it got to the point where I was on my course, where I was half the night I was also rounding, and then all day as well, and very, very beautiful silence. My mind keeps wanting to go to silly, funny things, like my best friend on the course was an Irishman, and he was very upset his wife had just divorced him while he was on the course.
Right.
And she was the daughter of some big producer in Hollywood. And my poor friend just didn't have enough money for her. So he's really upset, and he said, I'm going to go over to Maharishi's. I'm going to go to Maharishi's right now. And he went into the pitch dark on this little path to Maharishi's house. And I said, don't do it, Maharishi. Don't walk on the dark path at night, you know. And then he did, and all of a sudden he screamed bloody murder. He had just gotten bitten or stung by a what do you call them? Now that name is gone.
A scorpion or something, or
scorpion.
Yeah.
Really, and they're nasty ones up there.
Oh man.
And he just was running around on one foot, and we took care of him all night. You know, he was in absolute agony. But anyway, that's a silly thing.
No,
but I'm
no.
trying to give you the.
This is
I'm trying
fantastic.
to give the idea of what it was sort of like being there, you know. But there was one night that was so phenomenal. It was Shiva Ratri, and the Maharishi and he had all the local pundits, the old men who knew all the Vedic chants and everything. They were all doing this humongous puja, and I don't know, there must have been 20 of them. And the whole atmosphere was just alive, vibrant, you know. It was like you suddenly were in another place, on another planet, because it did not seem like what you'd call Earth. It was just so ethereal. All of a sudden, I'm standing there looking over the Ganges on the cliff, about 300 feet up on where the ashram was, and I look to the south, and all of a sudden the lightning was like veins, you know. It filled the whole sky like one connected huge vein, hundreds of connected huge veins, and the whole sky lit up while they were in the midst of this puja. And then all of a sudden one big huge one, which was wider than the actual building itself, the power station for Rishikesh, the town there. It was about 5 miles away. And this one huge, it was almost like all the lightning shafts combined into one and came down on top of that power station, and it just lit up. It was at the height of the puja, and I said, "Oh my God!" You know, that's the kind of living energy and sometimes amazing electric vibe of the place. You know.
I think.
Anyway,
I think you would refer to it as natural phenomena. I want you to listen to this audio clip. It's given me a lot of hope and a lot of strength in recent days. So we'll take a listen to it and then come back and talk about it.
I see that there are three basic natural fields of life: the field of action, the field of thinking, and the field of being. Obviously, the basis of the field of action is the field of thinking. We must think in order to act. Without thinking, action's really not possible. And I'm sure you'll realize that without being, thinking's not possible. How can we think without existence, without being? So being is the basis of thinking, as thinking is the basis of action. For powerful action, thinking should be powerful. For powerful thinking, being should be powerful.
I see there are three basic natural fields of life: the field of action, the field of thinking, and the field of being. The basis of the field of action is the field of thinking. You must think in order to act. Without thinking, action is really not possible. Without being, thinking is not possible. How can we think without existence, without being? Being is the basis of thinking, as thinking is the basis of action. For powerful action, thinking should be powerful. Thinking is the basis of action. You know, I found a tattered copy of Song of Life probably a year ago. And only recently I said, I wonder if this cat, Rick Stanley, is still around. Because here's the question: those three fields of life, was that instilled by Maharishi, or was that kind of your own theology? Or that's the wrong word. Is that your own philosophy?
every single word on that album was written by Maharishi.
Really?
Every word that I'm speaking. I wrote the songs, but based on his knowledge, and
Well, I mean,
and
the songs rock. I love them. They're upbeat. I mean, even my wife and daughters, they can't tolerate most of my music, but they love these songs. But this is so important. Please talk about. So this was the kind of stuff that he would be lecturing about, or was it the kind of stuff that he was riffing on at the Berkeley Community Theater before you even decided to go to India?
This is what he would lecture on from the beginning and all the way through. This was the basic knowledge: the three fields of life, 7 different states of consciousness, all the different things on that first album, and then all the things when he got more into the science, because he had so many scientists who were meditating, who were contributing through experimentation on meditators, actually verifying that fourth state of consciousness and beyond. At any rate, it was always what he was speaking about, and I spent traveling with him. I spent about 7 years listening and listening and listening, and I spent years teaching and repeating his knowledge. But it was we would lecture on his knowledge based on our own experience, and so one TM lecturer or initiator would give a bit different lecture or answer to questions, but it would always be based exactly on what Maharishi had said and your direct experience of it.
This is fascinating. I'm going back to when you were working with the Byrds producer, and you actually walked away from the music business. What natural fields of life are lacking in the materialistic the music business world? I mean, was there a reason why? Were there fields of life that were not present or relevant or even active in what you saw as the musical paradigm? Is that one reason why you were able to actually make this conscious decision to find peace and consciousness and consciousness elevation, as opposed to fame, praise, and superficiality?
But there was one beautiful thing back then, which made it, I guess it would have been a harder choice for anybody else, because Terry Melcher, he wanted the truth. He wanted, that's why he loved our songs, and he really did everything he could to make them, as appealing as possible. He took one song of mine, "Tell Me Love," that I wrote after having this experience. Well, it was basically a divine experience.
Can you talk about it?
And I talk about it in my memoir. It's talking about it that's kind of hard. And in the memoir, I don't even bother to try to explain it that much. I just say it as it happened to me. You know.
My show is about inspiration. I'd love you to, even in a simplistic way. You can't really put divine stuff into words, but what transpired?
Okay. Okay, here it is. Whoops.
Talking to Rick Stanley here on the Jake Feinberg Show, a musician and spiritual guru who had a deep relationship, collaboration with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who I've paid quite a bit of homage to on my program. So he's going to share.
So I'm not a guru. I'm not a guru. I was a teacher.
Well, don't be. Listen, you again. It's not your job to know the kind of impact you're having on other people. But when I put on your record at 6 a.m, it allows me to transcend. And to be honest with you, if you looked at what I've been doing, it's been inspiring. I'm not going to solely attribute it to you, but you don't know the kind of impact that you're necessarily having on other people.
Okay, I'm going to start reading just part way into this God experience.
Sure.
Okay, after about 6 months of meditating regularly with no drugs at all, I took a day trip to the beach at Lompoc, California with 2 cars full of friends. The muscular drummer Alphonse wanted to make a bonfire, and he and his mates spent a few hours gathering driftwood while I decided to take a hike down the beach. After about half hour, the combination of sun, cool salt air, and toasty warmth of the sand under my feet gradually soothed me into what seemed like a walking meditation. I saw my legs walking and the environment moving outside, while inside I was like watching a movie from an unmovable mountain of me. I closed my eyes with the wind waving my shirt and hair like a caress. Then it happened. Suddenly, my awareness drew me within to witness my own mind collapsing down into a point. My mind, my awareness just black-holed itself down into a focal point, an infinitely dynamic black hole with no actual time for a remembrance of awareness, then exploded like a consciousness volcano, and I was suddenly in what was obviously my natural state of awareness. My limited, obscured consciousness had lifted like a veil, and I could see my mental horizon expanded beyond my body limitations, out and out. I couldn't feel any limits to it. Looking ahead of me, I could see all these beautiful flowers growing in the sand along the beach that I hadn't even noticed before. I heard my voice respond. And it sounded so sweet, like a baby cooing. The more I walked along, the more my being became permeated with a warm bliss until I transcended in an instant into a full awareness of pure joy. I was pure, blissful joy, and there was God, the invisible divine Father, Mother above me. You are pure, blissful joy. I am your son. My open heart, my being cried in ecstasy. In this realization of my divine connection with God, I danced around in a circle making sounds I've never made. I ran up a sandhill in ecstatic bliss like a beautiful warrior hero. The loose sleeves of my Native American shirt and my long hair were blowing in the cool wind as I stretched out my arms to the sky. You are my son, my beautiful son, he said, and I was. Running down the beach, I had to thank you for this gift, my Lord. I grabbed 2 handfuls of flowers and ran to the water, threw them in, and fell to my face, prostrate in the wet sand at the feet of thee, my love. I walked a short way, and you washed the flowers up with your wave hands. One single finger of your ocean made its way to me and placed the flowers there, just at my feet, and I cried out in exultation, love. Heading back down the beach, I realized that what I had lost was all fear, and what I had gained was our very nature when fear is gone. This was the ecstasy of pure freedom, real freedom, which is like breathing, seeing, tasting, hearing, and touching blissful being. Then you were there over the ocean. You were there watching me, hiding from my roughness that was very gradually returning. You wanted to show me your face, but I was not ready. Still, you peeked at me and shot rays of your love at me that pierced my heart with the most exquisite ecstasy of love and purity, like a small child playing hide and seek. We played as the sun was singing into you with a rainbow of colors I had never seen on this earth before. My divine connection still remained, but its intensity was slowly melting. And as I walked back toward the others, I passed Alphonse, struggling with a log and making all sorts of animal noises directed at me, to me. He was about 40 yards from me, enveloped in what looked like a translucent cocoon, outside of which was the world as I was seeing it. An older guy was trudging down the beach, moving like a stiff robot in his more opaque cocoon. He passed me about 20 yards away. Obviously, the cocoons were the auric boundaries of the individual awareness, almost like little worlds within infinite, unbounded awareness, the limitations of the small, egocentric self. And it goes on.
Wow, that is, well, first of all, I mean, that is just extremely well written. Um, and there's not much. I mean, you mentioned this thing called the fourth state of consciousness. Could you enlighten me about that a little bit? What that is?
That basically, the fourth state of consciousness is just basically transcendence. It's being, action, thinking, being. Being is the fourth. It's your real self, your true self. And some people call it intuition because that's a part of it. And intuitive things like the phone's going to ring, or I know my mother's thinking about me right now. I can feel it.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Sure.
That's your higher self. That's your fourth state of consciousness.
Wow. I mean, so there was no way the gravitational pull of becoming a teacher of Transcendental Meditation. Do you look back with perspective and wonder if you could have balanced a authentic music career along with meditating, and I guess the point is, is regret's the wrong word, but was there a way to strike that balance the way the Beatles did, or ultimately, I've interviewed John McLaughlin, who Sri Chinmoy was his guru, and there were so many people that were looking to find this balance, not using hard drugs, getting off of hard drugs because they were seeing their friends dying, and then ultimately finding this state of peace, bliss, transcendence. I mean, obviously you've continued to play music, but you were mainstreamed into the industry at that time. I'm just curious if you ever look back on that and not regret, but just think about if you had that opportunity, could you have balanced it?
I couldn't have fulfilled what Maharishi needed at the time, what the movement needed. It desperately needed. My generation, their ultimate heroes were musicians. And if the musicians did it and stood for it, whatever, then that would inspire them to do it. An example, of course, was Donovan, hurdy-gurdy man, and he inspired a lot of people to start meditating from him doing it. But at any rate, concerning your question, there wouldn't have been a Song of Life, a Something Good Is Happening, in the Golden Dome, all these TM albums that I did at the time on these courses that had 2,000 and 3,000 people, all loving music. They desperately needed something more than just lectures. They needed music that they could relate to. So that was me, and then it was me and Paul. And what we did was we wrote songs and sang them. We'd write a song in the afternoon and learn it and sing it with full harmonies and changes in the evening at the lecture. At all these different courses, and they were all over Europe for quite a while there. And we did different albums that people would come to the courses, and they'd already know the puja from my first album to become teachers. So what my purpose was to streamline the whole thing and to get my generation to find the heart part of, the musical heart part of the knowledge. And Maharishi would pour that through me, and I would sing almost every night at the courses. And the people would be all ready, and then Maharishi would come on after I finished, and they'd all be completely laid back and ready.
This is great. This
was my purpose, and although it was almost, it was, as Terry told me, he was going to make me a very rich man and a very famous man. He wanted me to be a producer for Daywin Productions, his mother Doris Day's company, and he wanted to give me a huge salary and ownership of part of the company, all this stuff. And he had seen the movie Guy Grant. He'd read the book of the Magic Christian, and which was about Ringo being this selfless guy who could not be bought or sold. Money meant nothing to him. And Guy Grand was this practical billionaire who loved to make practical jokes, which were everybody has their price. And so Ringo did not have his price, and so he loved Ringo, and he and Ringo would do these practical jokes on everybody. See what their price was, and everybody seemed to have a price. Well, Terry cornered me in his office one day at Daywin, and he said, "Rick, I just read the book Magic Christian, and it intrigues me that you're a lot like Ringo." Because back then I was so completely not caring about any of the music industry rewards or fame or money or any of that. Because of some experiences I had, well, like I just read off, there was nothing as important as having that again and forever. And so for me, it was, now I sometimes think, well, I wonder if I could have. But then I remember, no, I couldn't possibly have put Marcy's knowledge in its purity onto albums with Columbia. I got pretty close with Tell Me Love, which was a direct song from my experience of that God experience, Tell Me Love. And it was a single, and I danced to it in a club in L.A. when it was on the charts there. And it's like a Celtic dirge, and it's really cool. But a whole album of those, no. And so, it was very obvious. And when you're hitched to a big company, there's no way you can do albums for other people. You've got your deal with that company, and that's it. So when I went and saw Maharishi, I had just left Columbia so that I would be open and free to do whatever I needed to do with him. And I've only regretted it in passing, thinking, geez, I should have stayed with Pam. And we should have carried out Terry's whole agenda, and we would have been, and then a few years later, I could have done albums for, the movement and stuff. But then it would have been too late. It was exactly the timing that was right for all these thousands.
And you know what? It would have been inevitably. It's just so funny you bring this up because those idiot suits at Columbia would have just torched the authenticity of the music and made it more poppy. And I think it's. You talking about Ringo Starr, by the way? When you say Ringo?
What's that?
You talking about Ringo Starr? Is that who you're referring to when you were talking about Ringo?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because Greg Rowley from Santana. I just got off the phone with him, and he's like, I don't want to sound simplistic here, but it was just the Beatles changed everything for everybody. And the thing about Ringo was it was his feel, his time feel, and then they were making up original music. I'm looking at The Gentle Soul, which was released on Epic. The cheapest copy on vinyl online is $30. I've never seen.
Well, Sundays brought it out again.
Say again.
Sundays remastered it and brought it out again a few years back.
I need to find an original pressing on vinyl. This is now a major. I have to. This is so important, Rick. I've interviewed everybody. This is the thing. When I interviewed Jim Kweskin from the Jug.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so
I loved him. He was my hero when I was in high school.
Kweskin. No, you know what I mean. I think here's the thing. He said he was playing at Club 47 or one of these gigs, and the guy from Vanguard Records was there, and he went up to Kweskin at the end of the gig, and he was like, I really can you make a record with this band? And I want to offer you a record contract. And Jim was like, well, this is not my band. We're just jamming, but I'd love to do a record. Let me put a band together. And then sure enough, that's where the Kweskin Jug Band came from. And I'm thinking, I've interviewed all the Rowan brothers. I've interviewed Maria. I've done 3 interviews with David Grisman. Where did you fit into that paradigm? Obviously you played up in Cambridge, but more to the point, the Queskin was offered a record contract before he even had a band. Was that something?
Yeah.
Is that the way it happened? Because I mean, you were singing authentic. You were a folkie, man.
Yeah, totally.
So where did you actually, like, did you grow up in Boston, or where did you?
I did, yeah. I'm from Brookline, Massachusetts.
Oh, hell, I went to Boston University. I was a huge fan of Brookline, man. Loved
Yeah,
it.
BU was just right down the street from where I lived for a while, yeah.
So can you describe, where, like, ultimately, like, some musical experiences there that helped you? Well, I guess ultimately, how did you wind up going from the Northeast out to California? Yeah.
I was in the Navy. So I was stationed in San Diego, and there were folk clubs around there, and I'd go to the Heritage, Mission Beach, and I'd go sing and play there on Liberty, you know. But then when we were over in Vietnam and the Philippines and all that, I would just practice in a little room that was supposed to be top secret, and nobody was supposed to be in there.
Wow.
But I'd have Dylan albums on, you know, and I'd learn all this stuff. But then when I came back, I went AWOL, and because I had already been in 3 years, and they were going to go back to Vietnam again, and we'd just gotten back, and I saw the Birds at the Trip in L.A., and I just flipped. They were doing Tambourine Man, one of my favorite songs, and I just flipped, and I said, I am not going back. This is the music scene is absolutely right for what I do right now, and so I just went AWOL, went up to San Francisco, hitchhiked cross country to Boston to the Newport Folk Festival, saw Donovan, and saw I think I saw Jim Quest. I think I saw the Jug Band play.
Right.
And then I had my brother turn me in as if I was sort of nuts, and
that's anything to avoid. I mean, were you in combat, or were you like a helicopter?
Oh yeah, we were. I was a radio man on the Admiral's ship. You know, it was a communications flagship, AGC-11, and
Wow.
we were there conducting the war basically from the ship, and a PT boat came by one night, and they ended up calling it the Tonkin Crisis.
Sure. And
what it was just, and I'm just going to say this because it's what I really believe, there were some UDTs, now they call them, what do you call them, SEALs. There were some frogmen who were down in our sleeping quarters, and they borrowed my guitar, and we all sang all night. The next morning, they got in a little boat, went out, and the next thing we knew, the next night, there were PT boats going by in the middle of the night. I was the one who discovered them. We were on radio. Everything was silent, no lights. But I heard this PT boat going by. I looked down, saw it, told the radar men, and they almost shit their pants.
Jesus.
Because they hadn't even noticed that they were playing poker. And so they shot up to the Admiral, hey, there's a PT boat. So the next morning, I give the radio signal for our destroyer escort to destroy that PT boat, which was obviously sitting there near the shore. And they blew it up. But I saw these guys jump out of it with UDT things on. And then they blew up the ship, the boat. And I heard, my goodness, those aren't Viet Cong or anything. So then it turns out that there's this caused the whole, uptick in the war, and Johnson made a big deal out of it. Okay, the enemy has raised the stakes enormously. They've attacked our ships, and it was just in my opinion, a false flag, But at any rate,
no, I mean, when this is so interesting because I interviewed David Crosby.
Yes, Crosby. He wanted to be in our group. He came up at Columbia. Terry brought him up because he approached Terry. He was in the Birds then, and they were just breaking up. And Terry told him, well, the Gentle Soul is really going to go places, and he played him one of the songs, Tell Me Love or something, and he flipped out, and he came up to us and he said, hey, any chance I could join your group, you know? And we knew he was a complete, by then we were just meditating. We weren't doing any drugs anymore. And we knew he was a complete drug freak out, you know? So we said, I don't think so. But, you know, it could have been the next Stanley, Crosby, and Poland instead of Nash and Young, but...
This is funny, though, because when I interviewed him, he talked about playing on the Sunset Strip, the Byrds, kind of when you saw them and flipped out. I wanted to know, because what he said, he goes, Ginsberg used to come with his partner, and they would dance all night, probably tripping out on that.
Yeah.
I'm very fascinated with the beats and the writers and Ferlinghetti, and I'm curious, can you talk about if you cross paths with any of those cats?
Well, when I was a kid in high school, basically, my mother was the head of the Institute of Contemporary Art in Newbury Street down in Boston.
Unbelievable. And
she had lunch every day at this place where it was all filled with beatniks, and even the cook, you know, had a huge beard and an earring and all that. And back then, nobody had big beards and earrings, you know, and I thought he was phenomenal, you know, this guy. Look at that beard. Look at the earring. Oh, man, is he a gypsy? What is that dude? And so I was absolutely in love with the whole beat idea, you know. And my mother was sort of a bohemian artist, brilliant lady. She raised us on her own. And at any rate, jumping from there, I went to Big Sur one time. I was on the way to San Francisco for the Monterey Pop Festival, or no, it was for something else. And we stopped at Big Sur, and at this small concert hall, Janis Joplin, who was a young thing, I think she was like 18, and she was cute and very clean and obviously not drugged at all, and she had this voice that would knock a ship out of the water.
Right.
But and there was Ginsberg standing right beside me, and I said, "Oh shit, there's Ginsberg. What's he doing here?" And I think I might have run into him in Greenwich Village when I first was coming back, hitchhiking across country to go to L.A. after I got out of the Navy. Stopped and I played at the coffee houses there for 2 weeks, and I would see him floating around and all sorts of. But there were some old beats there. There was one who was a flamenco guitarist, and he had called the Flamenco Club, I think it was, and he was kind of dissatisfied with the whole folk thing. You know, he played really nice flamenco, and the only people that would come into his club were mostly the beats, because they could handle flamenco, because it was. There was a lot of spontaneity there, and what you were going to play and all, as long as it was in accordance with a certain rhythmic, you know, hilarious or whatever.
This is phenomenal.
So,
yeah, go ahead, continue.
There were a lot of beats in there, and not many places, though, by the time I was in New York. But there were a lot of them when I was growing up in Boston. The Cafe Yana and many other folk clubs around Boston, and you'd go in there and there'd be these hauntingly weird people in there all smoking and drinking coffee and writing and with pencils in their ears. And
did you ever cross paths with Hugh Romney, aka Wavy Gravy?
No, if I did, I didn't know who he was.
He was up at BU at that maybe a little bit before your you were definitely alive at that time. I guess what I was trying to get at was this idea of improvisation. If you could talk about a seminal moment when you got to see someone like Mingus or Dolphy or Train, what was inspiring about their onstage bandstand presence, and how you incorporated that into your own music?
The drummer for
Elvin.
Remember Take 5?
Oh, Joe Morello.
Joe Morello. I saw him at the Surf Ballroom when I was like a sophomore in high school with the whole group. I can't remember their names, but the piano player and
Brubeck and Eugene Wright. Yeah,
Brubeck. I should have remembered that. But anyway, Joe Morello did a break where everybody just laid off, and he had his drum break, and he threw down his sticks in the middle of it and started using his fingers and his hands and his elbows and his feet, and he just was kicking ass. I could not believe
Holy cow! Wait, this is
He
unbelievable.
was
Wait, what was the name? What was the name of the club? The Surf Club.
the Surf Ballroom.
The Surf, and this dude was playing everything but his drumsticks.
Well, yeah, he had played it, up to that point, but then he just got off into this. You know how a drummer doing a drum break will go into a more soft sort of begin again kind of thing.
Sure.
Check, boom, check, and polyrhythms all over the place, like a different rhythm with each limb or each finger, like a tabla player can do. And he was doing tabla and everything else, African drumming, and all in one big drum break. And then he grabbed his sticks and built up again, and it was the most mind-boggling thing I do. I went up afterwards and said, oh my God, man. My father was a drummer with Philly Joe Jones, and he can't do anything like what you can do. And he just laughed.
Wait, hold on a second. He had a tabla on stage with him. He was playing. Is that
No, but he played the drums like it.
Okay, with the polyrhythm. Oh, I dig. Hold on. What are you talking about? Your father was with Philly Joe Jones. What does that mean?
Yeah, he went to Harvard and he was a drummer, jazz drummer, and he went to Harvard. And when Joe Jones would come to town, and he was sick, or when he wanted my father to sit in on a set or whatever at a concert, my father was always there when he'd come to town and go up and play on his drums with the group and everything.
No way. No, wait. You're talking. I want to be clear. You're talking about Philly Joe, not Papa Joe Jones.
Philly Joe Jones. Yeah.
Holy cow! With Miles?
No, my father,
this is
my
insane.
father was one. Huh?
This is crazy. I mean, how did he even meet Philly?
How did he what?
How did he connect with Philly Joe Jones to begin with? I mean, growing up in.
Well, he obviously must have gone to his concerts and talked to him and said, "Hey, can I try out your drums? Or can I, you ever need a drummer when, you want to take a break or whatever?" And the guy, of course, was, I imagine, was quite cynical at first. Here's this, college boy, but my father, if you grew up with him, you'd realize why he was so good. He never stopped drumming. Never. When he'd drive us down to my grandmother's house, the steering wheel and the jazz on the radio would become a whole trap set, and he'd be going wailing the whole way down
This is what I do now with my kids. This is just unbelievable. Yeah. This is so... And, you can tell it got into your soul, because even on the Song of Life album, your rhythm, your time feel is great. That was embedded from your dad, which is unbelievable. This is the other the other thing that I'm fascinated about is, do you remember the first time, not in the studio, but just the first time that you actually played your music with a trap set, with a drum set?
Oh, in the studio, it was with Hal Blaine. Was it?
I've interviewed Hal. No, because I'm looking at the Gentle Soul, self-titled, and there is only a tabla player listed on here.
Yeah, they put the album out after we had quit Columbia, and so they kept our names off of it,
Well, no, it's Bill Plummer on bass, Paul Horn, Mike Deasy, and Ry Cooter, Van Dyke Parks, harps.
Everybody but us.
Well, no, that's true, but there is no. So, who was the drummer on that session?
Russ Kunkel or Hal Blaine, I can't remember.
Unbelievable. That's awesome.
Our drummer wasn't good enough. He was a good road drummer. He was Dylan's road drummer, and also he was a drummer when Joe Cocker did his Mad Dogs and Englishmen, whatever it was called, tour. He did that with Pamela, my partner in the Gentle Soul, and with Sandy Konikoff, the drummer that we had. And Sandy had been Dylan's drummer before up in Toronto, with the band.
Wait, hold on. Wait, you're blowing my mind. Go back. How did we go from your so this studio album? Either it's Kunkel or Blaine, but your actual drummer, was Dylan's drummer.
Yeah, Sandy Konikoff. He was his road drummer.
Oh.
He's never been very good in the studio for some reason. I think he gets nervous, but on the road or in a concert, he's wonderful. Anyway, and he lives up in Toronto still, I think.
Unbelievable. He was the drummer, but wasn't Levon drumming with the band at that time? Or he was Dylan?
He was. But Sandy was connected with all of them. And I never really asked, how are you connected with them? He was from Toronto, and he was all fast friends with all the band. And I don't know. We even lived with Levon for a while, and they were best friends. In the Chateau Marmont, in Hollywood, our group shared the suite with Levon. He lived in a little teeny closet, and in that closet, the records, old-time LP records, went to the ceiling all around the entire room. He slept on this little mattress, and he spent the whole day when he wasn't out doing stuff, just listening to the LPs and learning from them, learning mandolin, learning all this stuff.
This is Rick Stanley is really wait, what year would you put this at that he was down there?
67, 68.
Unbelievable. So he had the band had already left Toronto at that point. He had moved to Southern California.
Yeah, he was in L.A., and I don't know why, but
can you talk?
There are a lot of.
Yeah, no, I mean,
yeah.
I want to do part 2 with you. We have more to do, but as we wrap up part 1 here, I just kind of wanted you to talk about your concept of love, and for people out there that don't have a lot of resources or that are stuck in their habitual nature, and have a limited kind of a narrow view of the world, could you offer some words of stuff that comes from your soul and maybe the lineage of Maharishi as to how to broaden your view, how to find your true nature, and how to love?
Well, all of that is extremely simple if you just learn the proper meditation technique. And Christ even said it, I shouldn't say even. He said it very clearly. Kingdom of heaven is within you. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all else will be added unto you. So basically, that's what Maharishi says. He said, dive deep within the silence of being, your own inner self. Dive deep within that. It's beyond the mind, so you can't think your way in. You can't mood make your way in. You can't say, I'm born again and be realized. Born again means to be born again, reincarnation.
That's right.
Not make a mood of Jesus is my best friend because I said so in front of a whole bunch of people.
Right.
But the reality is it's very simple. You just go within your own self. And if you're guided by just a simple technique that's been handed down for millennia, it works. And thousands and millions of people are doing it. And you find that silence, at first it's just this, you went beyond the mind. Suddenly you're gone. And you'll come out, and it might have been 10 minutes. It might have been 1 minute. It might have been a second, or it might have been an hour, because there's no time in that space. In other words, you don't feel time. You don't have a sense of time. It's timeless. What the part of you that's involved in time is what causes you to die, what causes you to have problems, causes you to have joys. But the joy that you can get from going to that twice a day, just even 20 minutes, And then coming out, it is if infuses into your system, and you get used to it, and that silence. A little more, it builds each day and builds. And eventually, and then real love, what love really is. Human love is it's almost laughable if you've experienced God's love. It's sad, actually.
Well, I think is it sad that people have a misconception of what God's love is?
It's just the most innocent. Like, it's funny. God shows his love in nature all the time with babies, little animals, little teeny kittens, little puppies, little children. That's the innocent expression and the giggles you hear from a little baby. That's God. That's what God sounds like. It's that complete divine innocence. And the little animals have it, the little humans have it, just, a spark of it. And you can watch YouTube and watch babies laugh when their parents tickle them or something, and you hear that. It will flutter your heart because it's just pure love. And that's just the tiniest little expression of God's love. Imagine what the whole thing is, it's so sweet. It's just pure innocent sweetness. And if you ever see that in your life from your wife, your lover, your friends, your children, there'll be a little spark of that here and there, and that's why you love them. You'll see that, you'll feel that. And it's not just the attachment you have over time with a person. Anyway.
No, I know. You know what it is? One reason I'm silent is because I know exactly what you're saying. And but I have never thought about it in the concept of that being God's love.
God is love. That's the thing is, they always say that God is love. But
right.
In one sense, yeah, pure love, pure innocent love. And if you approach it with that sense and do your meditation and that divine love will grow in your life, and you'll start seeing it in people, because everybody has it in them, in their heart, even if it's the tiniest spark of it, it's there. And you can bring it out. I remember once I went by a woman's house, and I grabbed some flowers because I was going to a puja down at the Yogananda Center, and I grabbed the flowers, and a woman from this is in Hollywood, on Sunset Strip, and the woman opened the window and screamed at me, "You bastard, what are you doing? Taking my flowers, you bastard!" And I put them back down and said, "I'm sorry, I love you." And for some reason, I'd never done that in my life. I never say that. But something poured through me. I just said that, and it really meant it, because she looked so unhappy. And so then I just trotted along. I came back from that puja and from that the Yogananda Center, and I came back and I was walking by the house, and she was standing there with her whole garden in her arms. Her arms were full of all her flowers, and she came over crying and handed them.
My God. We are just... Rick Stanley has just blown my mind today, man. I really... it's amazing how far a tattered record in a thrift store can take you. Song of Life continues to be an inspiration to Jake Feinberg, and I'll get a copy of this to you later on, and we'll set up a time to do part 2. Okay?
All right.
Did you enjoy yourself?
Loved it. It was great to meet you.
Great to meet you, man. Much love, and we'll be in touch, my friend.
Okay.
Later on.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.